Welcome to For the Love of Books, Bees Books Edition, a podcast by North Lanarkshire Libraries.
Hi, this is Pari.
And this is Jennie, and we're here to talk about Bees books.
So this time, the theme that Bee gave us is called A Colourful Life, which I was both excited and a little about because my life is pretty colourful.
Yes.
As you can see, I'm always a walking, talking, colourful bundle. But in terms of books, it was a bit of a tough one, the theme. I had a few stops and starts, but I think I'm happy with the one that I've chosen.
Bee does like to challenge us, and
She does.
I thought the last one was a big challenge. This one, no problem at all.
Oh, nice. It's good we take...
absolutely.
we exchange the roles of the trouble.
So the book I've chosen is
Oh.
called In 1,000 Different Ways, and it's by Cecilia Ahern. I have never read any of her other books, and this was just a passing comment by another member of staff, and I started it, and then Bee gave us this challenge, and I thought, it fits in perfectly. So I'll tell you a wee bit about it in a wee second, but I'm interested to find out what you've chosen.
Just before that, I have to say, I love her outfit there, and I would absolutely wear it, like on the cover.
It's a very Pari outfit.
It is, yeah. So
Yep.
I would have been like, oh yes, this is A Colourful Life.
Yep.
So what I've chosen, it's the graphic novel version of The Babysitter's Club.
Excellent.
And it's a series that I grew up with, not the graphic novel, I'm not a baby. This was very recent. But it was in the 80s and 90s, it was really popular, like this series of American novels. But more recently, they've sort of readapted it because that was not very much a product of its time. I think it still can speak across, but it's still like very 80s and 90s. But this is, I think, trying to reach new audiences, and they're doing it by Raina Telgemeier. I think that's how you say her name. She's written some other middle grade graphic novels for children, and she's really popular. So she's adapted, I think, the first few. So this is Christie's great idea. But then there are other people who've adapted other books. So they're on like 13 or 14 now. So it's pretty successful. And it's, as you can see, I took it very literally. Bee's instructions. It's an all-colour graphic novel, which
Very
feels
colourful.
very luxurious, an all-colour graphic novel.
It does.
So, yeah. But I'm dying to hear about your book.
I have notes. I don't
You
always
have
make notes,
notes?
but I actually have notes this time.
Amazing.
So I will find my first note. That's pages turning there. So basically, it's a book about this girl, and it takes you right through her life from when she's about 8 years old. And she has a thing called, and I apologise because I am going to pronounce this completely wrong, synesthesia.
Synesthesia?
Possibly, yes. Which basically means that her she can see things slightly differently than other people. So it is a thing, it is an actual thing. So for example, if you look it up, one person, whenever they heard a trumpet play, would see the colour red. It's like people who, when they taste something, maybe see a colour, or when they smell something, they taste something. So it's when your senses kind of get slightly mixed up. That's how I kind of see it.
Oh, I see it as a superpower. You're telling me there are people walking and living in the world next to us who have secret superpowers?
That's quite interesting because there's a bit in the book about that. But yeah, so at 8 years old, she goes home. And it's just her mum and her two brothers. And she goes home and there's this kind of blue mist in the house. And she goes upstairs and it's coming from her mum. So her mum's basically blue, and obviously she thinks something bad's happened. She phones an ambulance. The ambulance comes out, and it turns out the mum's fine. She's quite scared, that these big ambulance people were there in her room. And then poor Alice gets into trouble for it from her mum because obviously she's got a fright. But basically from that point on, she sees colours like odours around people for their mood and how they feel. And like as she gets older, it's basically how she copes with having this superpower. And it's just a really interesting book. It's not one I would usually read. There's not a murder in it, it's not a gripping thriller. It's just how she copes with it. And it's really interesting, and it did make me go and kind of look it up and see that it was a real thing. And I think this is done to the extreme, but so basically her mum has issues, and she's always this kind of dark blue colour. Our older brother, Hugh, has a pink colour about him, and he's quite a kind of friendly, affable person. And now that she can see these colours, she can see that our mum's blue tentacles, as she sees them, tries to come out and affect other people. So Hugh, our brother, it just bounces off him. He's learned how to just kind of ignore the moods. Now that she can see it herself, she kind of, is slightly scared, but she can work out how to avoid it. But our younger brother seems to be really affected by it. And as the book progresses, you realise how that affects each of their lives as they're going on. And it's just a fascinating book. So I'm going to have a quick look at my notes.
Yeah. So is it from childhood to adulthood?
Yes, it's childhood to the very end.
Yes. That took a sinister turn.
No, in a bad way. It's a lovely way, and it just takes you right the way through. So from 8 years old, she comes home, and the colours affect her. So even strangers, she sees colours in everybody. So even strangers, like if she brushes past them, some of their colour will stick to her. So if they're in a good mood, it kind of transfers slightly to her. And if they're in a really bad mood, it slightly transfers to her as well. And it's how basically she can use this superpower to do things, which she does. She gets her job out of it. She can see what people want from her in a job interview. So she gets this quite high powered job, but then she can't really cope with that because she's got it under false pretenses basically, and it's not real, if you know what I mean. And she gets really overwhelmed with them, and eventually she finds a healer who doesn't know what she can do. She just knows that she can help and heal people. And she kind of works with her a bit, and Naomi shows her how to put barriers up slightly so that she's not affected. But it's a temporary measure. She can't do that all the time, but she does, and then it kind of has a negative effect on her. And it's just basically how she goes on. At one point she sees somebody who has no colours on a train just in passing. She sees this man.
That's a bit scary.
Well, yes, but she's never seen somebody like that before, so she basically chases after him. And because she can't judge how he's feeling or anything like that, she has to actually work at it. They eventually fall in love, and it's happiness. But there's a point where, if I can find it, she kind of says that basically judge people so quickly by their colours, their true hidden selves. I make a decision instantly whether to move forward with them or not. I never try to learn anything more about them or get to know the outer part or try to understand them or even understand the reason for their inner part. Even with more insight than most, I recognise that 8-year-old I became lazy with people, and she just doesn't bother learning to learn about them. She just goes, oh, your aura is this colour, I know that you're an honest person, etc, etc. She becomes quite lazy, and she says that's the fun part for most folk, is trying to work out, and sometimes it can take a couple of days, a couple of years, it can take a couple of decades, but she knows straight away if this person's trustworthy. And it's really interesting. So she eventually gets sent to an academy for special needs kids, people with Tourette's and things like that, who maybe don't fit into a mainstream school. And because you were talking about superheroes earlier, she meets somebody called Gospel, who's got Tourette's. And he's not there because he's got Tourette's. He's there because he acts out once the tics and that start. But good news is he goes on to become quite good. He goes on to become a footballer, because on the football pitch all of that disappears. So basically it's a school like this, and you and I immediately go, this sounds like X-Men. I
did think X-Men.
And one point he does say that. So she eventually tells Gospel why she's there, what the actual reason behind it is. And after a lot of talking, he kind of says to her, well, what is a superhero? It's a character that possesses abilities beyond those of normal people, just like you. Someone that uses their powers to help the world to become a better place, to fight crime and protect the public, just like you. So yes, you know, it does feel like that she's got superpowers, and basically it's a superhero story, how she adapts to those powers and how she goes on.
But that's really cool because, you know, I've been reading a little bit and watching and things online about neurodivergence and how in like different kinds of sort of neurodivergent traits and abilities and disabilities, and how usually it's like always told from a deficit model, like this is the stuff that's wrong with you, this is how, and it's true, like not the wrong with you, but it does make people their lives difficult in ways because society can't accommodate them. But then there's sort of, I think, a growing, and it might have been there before, I'm just accessing it now, but talking about how things like ADHD, for example, which is I'm most connected with, how some of those things can be looked at in a way positively, like how it helps you. So, and it's obviously, it's not like all good or all bad, just like in her life here, it's not all like all good or all bad, but it's nice to have look at it from another perspective as well. And sometimes you need other people to be able to tell you because you're so caught up in the everydayness of it. It sounds fascinating. I would want to read a non-fiction book about synesthesia because that's like, I love popular science books, and I would I need to look it up. It sounds amazing.
I mean I say it's not something that I would have like picked up myself if somebody hadn't said to me, read this, and then it obviously fitted in with Bee's challenge. But it was such an interesting book. I did cry, I will admit. I'm quite easily set to crying, but it was just a wonderful book.
So was it recommended to you by
yes, I was another member of staff just kind of said, oh, this was really good. But when you work in a library, your pile of books that you want to read is quite big. It just came at that time where I didn't have such a big pile.
But that's the benefits of working in a library. I think you're never short of things to read.
How about your book? I'm still interested in this.
So this is, I think, very much a children's book. I have really fond memories of the series because I grew up reading them. And so I'll tell you what the premise of it is. So in this first book, Christie's Great Idea, it's basically, one, like she lives with her siblings, her brothers, and a single mom, and in the US. And the mom, she works, so she's trying to call around because she doesn't have babysitters for she can't find any babysitter for her youngest child. And usually the siblings take care of him, but they're all busy, they all have things to do. So Christie's idea is basically to start a babysitters club because she does babysitting in and she knows a couple of friends. So it's basically a business proposal that she puts up, which is, what if parents and adults, whoever, call just one number and access to a group of babysitters instead of calling around everywhere else. And that's what the series is about. It's all about, so on the surface, it's all about like babysitting and babysitting adventures and like mishaps and business rivalries and things, like all sorts of drama.
Oh, is there like a rival babysitter club? Ooh.
Yes, there is. And there's some they try to steal ideas and steal customers and all this. But at its heart, I think it's about like a group of girls and like a couple of boys later who also babysit, but their interactions with each other, and they're very much at the center of the action and lots of agency and lots of different kinds of girls. So like Christy is a very sporty girl. There's another arty sort of thing, like this Japanese American Claudia Kishi, whose wardrobe I think I emulate sort of subconsciously. I think I've grown up to become her. Then there's like this really fashionable New York Stacy, and like all these different, there's one very shy, quiet Marianne who likes cats and books and things. So it's just all these different kinds. And then they have later a Jessie Ramsey, who's this black girl and black family that moves into the neighborhood, and there's some racism there that they experience a little bit, but it's all, so that's what it's like. On the surface it's about babysitters, but they talk about divorce and blended family, like all these things that go on in a child's life, but without making it preachy or anything. It's just, it's like this group of friends. But what I love retellings. It's one of my favorite things. I know some people don't like retellings of, especially something that they're really fond of, and like I completely understand. But I love retellings for the reason that I like what a different perspective does to the story of like that I have loved before. So this is a graphic novel retelling of it, and it's really interesting because Reina, she takes on the bits and updates some of the things and changes some of the things based on what she's really interested in. But then there's also a Netflix show called The Babysitter's Club, which is one of my favorite shows as an adult. As like it's for, I think it's for like young people, but I think like even adults could, you know, like who watch, because I think growing up a lot of the media, I don't know how it is now, but while I was growing up, it was very boy-centered, a lot of the media. And this was like one of those, the series that was really very much about girls. So I think all genders can like engage with it because it's just a good story. And in the TV show, it's just like of, you know, these 13-year-old girls just having lots of different kinds of lives. So then I know that trying to challenge stereotypes of girlhood, I think, but in a very fun way. Like they're all mad characters. They're all like you'd want to hang out with them. If I was a 13-year-old, I would have wanted to see. So it's just different examples. And then there's also, because we're a podcast, I found a podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it's such a funny podcast. It's called The Babysitter's Club podcast, and it's two friends, two like middle-aged men. They're like in their 30s. They were when they started 30, so they decided that they are going to read the whole series.
Excellent.
And like each episode like discuss it. So one of them has never read The Babysitter's Club before. One of them like grew up with female cousins a lot, so he used to read a lot of them while growing up and has fond memories like I do. But they're completely unhinged in the podcast. Like they've built this alternative canon. Like they're kind of trying to do it seriously, but also kind of really not. And I can't even describe it. It's just so like I look forward to doing dishes because I'm listening to it and giggling away. And it's just so that's another sort of adaptation almost. So that's why I love these kinds of what different voices and perspectives can do to the same story. So this is one I would absolutely recommend, the Netflix show and the podcast if you're into that sort of thing. I just love it.
I'm interested in hear you saying about alternative retellings. I don't know if you've ever read the Disney Twisted series.
No, but it's on my list because I love villains as well, like things told from the villain's perspective.
They're really good. So there's a series that's the villains, but there's also a series that's Twisted Tales. So they've taken Aladdin and they've changed it slightly, and each book is a different author, but they're very, very good. You know, you kind of settle into it thinking, oh, I know where this is going, and then it changes, and like you say, it's a different voice picking up a fairy story basically, and kind of changing, you know, maybe as you say from the villain's perspective, or I can't remember the details, but for example the Beauty and the Beast one, they don't get the rose in time, the rose, you know, and then so the beast stays as the beast, but you learn more about why he became the beast in the first place and things like that. I enjoy that kind of a thing as well, that kind of slightly different way of looking at things.
So online fan fiction, this is why as a teenager, like of course fan fiction gets a really bad rep for I think not unproblematic reasons, but like I was not really interested in the romantic sort of fan fiction anyway. I wanted more stories set in a world that I loved basically, and I used to really like the ones that were very different from the perspective as well. Like some people like to read things that were in the same voice as the original author, whereas I liked things where characters were, you know, like completely like their own people. And it was just like, it was such a great way to explore the world in so many different ways that one author can't do because of their perspective, limited perspective and knowledge. So I just think this is great. Another great, again, Netflix show, which was cancelled too soon, just like The Babysitter's Club, justice for the babysitter, hashtag justice for the Babysitter's Club, and with an E, which is not a retelling, well, sort of Anne of Green Gables. And it's one of my favorite shows. So like Netflix had these two really brilliant shows and they let it go. They let them go. So, and again, Anne with an E is sort of, it's set in the past, so it's not like a modern thing, but they tackle a lot of the issues that we're now more aware of. So for example, like I don't know how much you've encountered this in Canadian perspective because it's set in Canada, but a lot of indigenous perspectives and like sort of putting their voices and histories back into the story. So there is one like indigenous character, like Anne befriends this family and this girl, and it becomes really sad and things, but that reflects the real, like their real history of like the First Nations people in Canada. And that's not something at that time in the 1800s was really being talked about in the way it is now. So it's still set in the past, but the concerns, like it's sort of the past and the present in conversation with each other in a way that's still really joyful and loving. And you know that these people love the source material, but they want, like, they're like, what if something, or what if like this happened, or what if this was a part of the story. And this is the reason I love retellings. So I fully recommend.
I must admit, there's a couple of books that I would like to take the main character and do something else with them. I mean, I'm not into doing it myself, but
fan fiction, Jenny. That's where you need to be. Archive of our own is where you need to hang out.
If there was one character you could take out of any book and retell their story slightly differently.
Ooh, that's an excellent question.
I've just thrown that at you.
You have, yes. But I think maybe Anne. I like I know I just mentioned it, but I read Anne of Green Gables not at a time when people usually read it. It was like in my early 20s, and usually people read Anne of Green Gables as a child. But I've never felt as seen in a character. Like I reread it like a couple of years ago, and I was like, it's still the same. Like even 10 years later, I still feel that sense. I would really like the kind of madness, that the lunacy in Anne. I would love to see her in different settings. So either like often a very different kind of adventure, because Anne of Green Gables was really realistic. So what if we put her in Hogwarts, for example? How would she gel with the trio, and what, like I would write it in a very, so I had written Harry Potter fanfiction, I might have mentioned this. It was a sitcom version of Voldemort and the Death Eaters.
Excellent. Okay.
So I used to always write things that were a little bit unhinged, I think. So I would like Anne to be maybe with the trio, and she just, like, all their adventures lead to like madness and accidents, and so it would be more like fun and not death. What about you?
I don't know, as you were talking there, I was trying to think. I've given you that question. It's probably going to bounce back to me. I don't know, I think I would take the unnamed character, the main character, out of Rebecca, one of my favourite books, and put her in different circumstances. Maybe not meet Max, maybe meet somebody else and see how she got on with them. Just...
What happens when she meets Max? Is it a spoiler?
Oh, do you not know?
I don't. I haven't read Rebecca.
Read Rebecca.
Okay.
I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't read it.
Yes.
It's one of those kind of classic books. I
know it's a bit scary.
It's a wee bit scary.
Yeah.
And it's a wee bit and I know there has been books kind of written around about it. But yeah, she's an unnamed character, and she meets this man, and she's quite young, and basically she goes off and marries him, but he's been married before to Rebecca, and it's kind of, it's not a ghost story, it's not a kind of, it's hard to describe.
But that would be interesting. And that's just reminded me, so I watched this fantastic musical called Pride and Prejudice, sort of.
Okay.
And it's basically Pride and Prejudice, but it's told from the perspective of the servants who don't get, so it's sort of like a class commentary thing, like they do all the work, but it's also so funny, and like the music is just fantastic. So like that kind of, it's still happening in all these different formats, and I'm going, in a couple of weeks I'm going to watch 6, the musical, which is about Henry VIII's wives that he kept killing and getting rid of, basically. But this is putting their perspectives at the forefront. So and like Hamilton as well, like it's telling it from a different kind. So I can have a whole podcast about retelling.
I think nowadays though, that's done very well. Years ago it wouldn't have worked. You wouldn't have been able to introduce different characters into Anne of Green Gables, because it just wouldn't have worked. As you say, it just wouldn't. Even 20 years ago it probably would have been, but now we've got more open-mindedness to that kind of a thing, and that we can
still not for everybody though. There are a lot of people who are very angry that you've destroyed this fount of my perfect memory, or like whatever, which I understand. I just disagree with.
I always think though, if it's a book or a film or something like that, and you've read the original, you don't have to read. You know, you don't have to go on and read that.
100%,
You don't have to watch it.
100%. And it speaks to a different kind. Like, for example, this graphic novel. I know, like, I think about 14, so it's obviously doing well enough that they keep continuing.
Absolutely.
And it's reaching so many new people who probably wouldn't have picked up the books themselves that are numbered in 100 something. So I don't know.
I did work in libraries in the middle of the series, and I do remember it felt like every week you were getting a new Babysitters Club book in. I never read them, but you know, you were kind of processing the books and you were like, oh, here's another oh, here's another. But it's great because the people that liked it, and it meant that they were reading, you know, and that's the important part, especially for that age group.
And now there's like new kids, new generations through Netflix, through this, probably not the podcast, more for adults, but yes. Yeah.
Oh, I think we've done Be very proud this time.
We have. We've approached it from very different perspectives, but I think she's quite happy. Well, what about the next challenge? Do you know any rumours?
Well, I think she's sticking with the colour theme. And the next one is Golden Years. Of course, the song is now in my head, but
I must listen to it after we finish recording. I don't think I know it, but yes.
But yeah, Golden Years.
Golden Years.
I think that could be quite interesting.
I'll have to get my thinking cap a thinking.
I've already got mine set up.
It's
taking me 3 minutes there to work out what I want to do. But yeah, I think that's going to be interesting.
Okay, I can't wait to find out what we're golden earring.
Excellent.
Yes, but that's it for us now. Yeah. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.